So if you're watching this right now, you're in year 11, which is your final year of secondary school. You're probably feeling really stressed, overwhelmed, and you don't know where to start. You've reached a perfect video, because in today's video, I'm going to be teaching you how to best spend year 11 in order to get amazing grades in all of your exams. My name is Shola and I'm a final year dental student studying in London, and in 2018, I managed to achieve straight grade 9s and A stars in all of my GCSEs. And you're probably thinking, oh, I'm just naturally smart, I just got it. No, when I tell you at the start of year 11, I was so stressed. I didn't know how I was going to get the grades that I needed to do the degree that I'm doing now, and I felt so scared. So in today's video, I'm going to be telling you all of the tips that I wish someone had told me back then, which would have made it so much more easier. So before we jump into the video, be sure to like, comment and subscribe, as it really helps to support my channel and help me to make videos like this. Be sure to grab a cup of tea, a pen and paper, because this video is going to be extremely helpful. It's going to have a lot of tips and advice, and I don't want you to miss a thing. So let's jump straight into the video. So this is one of my most frequent comments that I get on this channel. Shola, how do I actually revise? Because I know before year 11, you may not have been revising properly, you may not have taken it seriously, you just didn't really know what to do in order to get good grades, and it probably didn't have that much of an impact for you until now, because now these are your final exams that you need for A-levels and for university, so you probably want to lock in and know how to revise properly. So here's how you can actually revise to get grade 9s in the least amount of time possible. The first step is understand, then memorize. The amount of times I see people trying to memorize something they don't even understand, it's too much, because honestly, it will not stick and it will not suffice to get you those amazing grades in the exam. Memorizing things before may have helped you for your end of year exams, for your little mocks and lessons, but if you want to get good grades this year, you really need to understand the topic and comprehend it fully before you try to memorize it, because this will help for your long-term retention. In class, your focus should be on understanding the topic there and then. It shouldn't be on writing the most notes, it shouldn't be on making pretty notes, pretty titles, because when I tell you, these notes are not going to follow you into the exam. What is in your brain will follow you into the exam. So understand the topic there and then, and if you don't, then you need to ask questions. You need to raise your hand and ask questions. I know how daunting and nerve-wracking it can be to ask questions in the lesson, but this is what makes the difference between a grade 9 student and the rest, because they conquer their misunderstandings there and then. They don't leave it until exam season where they have a bunch of things they don't understand and then have to go through it before you actually start to do exam questions. This is something that can make exam season more stressful than it has to be, because ideally in exam season you just want to be doing questions back to back. You don't want to be going back and trying to understand something that you should have understood in year 10. So I really recommend ask questions in the lessons. Don't be embarrassed. And something else that I used to do is when I used to do exam questions that I didn't understand, I would highlight the exam question, draw a star next to it, and then bring it to my teacher after school, and we'll basically go through the questions so that I understand it. And if I don't understand anything, then I would clarify that so that I could actually know how to do the question next time. Because doing stuff like this, it means that in exam season you'll be quickly flipping through these questions, you will have to go back to the topic and try to understand it again, and it just makes things a lot more easier. And if you don't understand something there and then, that's okay. The perfect thing that you have right now is the internet. So the internet has so many resources, which means that if you don't understand something, you don't have any excuse. You need to search it up. And this video is actually kindly sponsored by Pearson. So Pearson actually made a big chunk of my revision in year 11. I used to use their revision guides, their flashcards, and I found it so helpful, especially when I didn't have time to make my own resources. One of my favorite resources from them used to be the maths flashcard. These flashcards are so good because they condense every topic into a mini flashcard, which also includes a question at the bottom. So that's basically my revision method into one card. It's so useful when you want to go through a specific topic in maths that you're not really understanding, and then test that you understand it by going through the question that it has. And on the back it has a worked answer, which means that you can see which steps that you're missing out, see if you've gone wrong and where you've gone wrong, and then adapt your working out to make sure that you get the right answer next time. One thing that's also really cool is that with every Pearson flashcard or revision guide, it actually comes with the online book that you can get. So you just have to go on Pearson Revise and put the codes in from the book or from the flashcard, and you get access to the book anywhere that you go online. I find that that's extremely useful. There's also the Pearson Revise subscription, which means that you can have access to all of the revision guides for all of the different topics, which is so useful in this day and age when you don't really want to be carrying a book around everywhere. This is honestly a game changer when it comes to GCSE, because as you probably know, textbooks tend to have too much information there to know what you actually need to memorize for your exams. So having revision guides like this basically means that you condense everything. You can memorize memorize what you need to know quickly, and then you can test your understanding by using the questions in the book. Especially if you're in year 11 and you need to cover year 10 topics, I find that this is really useful because you don't have to go through your whole big textbook. You can just go over everything really quickly. Another thing is for history, the textbook was humongous. Like, I just didn't know how much I needed to know for history. But in terms of the history revision guide from Pearson, it basically condensed an entire subtopic into one A4 sheet. I basically used this to form my notes. So I actually didn't use the textbook throughout the GCSEs to revise, and then afterwards I would condense this and make a little flashcard of it. I have more detail about how I use this in history in my history video, so be sure to check that out. But honestly, Pearson resources are amazing for GCSEs, so definitely check them out. Use the link in my description to check out the textbooks and also the Pearson Revised subscription. You don't want to miss out. Whenever I didn't understand something, I made it my mission to make sure that I understood it by like the end of the week. I didn't want to leave it until the end of the year or until exam season where I start to get stressed. So what I really recommend is know what exam board you're doing. So one thing that I found out is that a lot of people don't actually know what exam boards are or what exam boards they're doing. And when I tell you, this is actually crucial for your exams because you need to know what you need to know. Like, you can't just be memorizing things blindly and not knowing whether it comes up in your specification. To know your exam board, all you have to do is look at the textbook that you're using in class or ask your teacher. And there's many different exam boards. There's AQA, there's EdExcel, there's EduCast, there's OCR. So it's really important you know which one. And then once you find out which one, when you're searching on YouTube for the topic that you don't understand, for example, let's say digestion, you can also write the exam board, because this basically means whatever video you watch is tailored towards your exam so that you don't learn anything that you don't need to know. And once you're watching a video, just make sure that you understand it. So you can draw little diagrams, you can make funny little acronyms. You don't want to be blindly copying things down. You want to make sure that your notes that you're making, whatever you're writing, makes sense to you, so that if you were to look at it at a different date, you would understand it. Once you understand something, it's time for step 2, which is active recall and revision methods. So if there's anything you get from this video, let it be this: highlighting, rewriting, rereading is not gonna cut it this time. It's not gonna get you those top grades that you really want. You need to actually actively revise, and active revision methods are very, very important in this year. So what I really recommend for essay-based subjects, you can do something called blurting, which is basically when you write down everything you know about a topic. So this is especially for religious studies. When I studied religious studies, I basically made an A4 poster of each topic, which meant that I could refer back to this when I was doing my blurts. So when I'm blurting the topic, I would then get a plain paper, write down everything I know about the topic, and then look at this poster I made previously, write down everything that I missed out in a red color. And then the more times I did this, the less that I had to write down things in red, because I would just automatically memorize it. After I did this, I would then do an exam question in this topic, just to test that I actually understand this topic and also to build my essay writing technique. After I did an essay, I would give it to my teacher, because that's the best person to get advice from. And also they can basically give you little tips and tricks to help make your next essay better. Every essay that I would do, I would take the advice that they gave me and integrate it in that essay so that I could slowly see an improvement. And eventually, when I did this for religious studies, I managed to get 15 out of 15 for every single exam question that I did. So this is the best way to tackle essay-based subjects. For science-based subjects such as maths or biology, chemistry, these subjects require flashcards. So flashcards are really helpful. So one thing I really don't like is when people make their notes into flashcards, and it's just like a flashcard that has so much tiny writing. It's basically their notes condensed onto another piece of paper. When I tell you this is the biggest waste of time, not only the process of making them waste time, but trying to memorize big chunks of information like this is just honestly not gonna cut it. So how I would make a grade 9 flashcard is that I would go to my specification. So the way that you find your specification is that you go on Google, search the exam boards, then you search biology GCSE specification. You then have to look out for a PDF, not the actual website, but a PDF. Once you scroll down, you'll find the topic that you're on, and you'll have points of each of the things that it wants you to know for that specification. So these points, you want to essentially turn them into questions. So just rephrase them and then make it into a question. This will be the front of your flashcard. After that, on the back, you then write out the answer. So you can get the answer from a revision book, from your notes, from a video, and just make it into something that you know that you'll be able to memorize. Don't use all of these big words you've never used before that you won't memorize. Just make it into something that would help you to actually recall it as soon as you see the question. Once you do this for every point in the specification for that topic, that basically means that you cover everything that could possibly come up. So anything that comes up in the future, you can know that you've covered it. It might require some application or for you to apply your knowledge in a different way. You should always have the reassurance that you've covered everything by doing this method. So as you can see, what I really recommend is doing some form of active revision and then testing it by doing exam questions. This is the perfect way to revise in year 11. So let's move on to how to organize your time. So you might feel like 1 year is a lot of time, but when I tell you year 11 is the year that goes so quick. Maybe you're in September, you're starting the year, and then the next you're in the exam hall sitting your first exam. So it's really important that you know how to plan your time effectively and you use your time in a good way. So what I really recommend is making a smart timetable. So don't just rely on going home and choosing what subjects you want to revise, because this is not the way to tackle year 11. Having a solid revision plan is the difference between productive study sessions and panic cramming at the end of the year. When making a revision timetable, you don't want to just put the subjects that you find easy, that you enjoy. You need to focus on your weaknesses. I have a revision timetable template that you can use in the description. Just click on it and then make your own copy, and then this is how you actually plan the timetable. So let's say you find maths really difficult, you just don't get it, you're not getting the best grades in it. You want to integrate maths throughout your timetable. You want to make sure that you have you could do it every other day or even every day if you needed to. But then let's say I was finding religious studies really easy. I would only study that maybe once or twice a week. You basically have to make the decision to study the subjects that you don't find easy the most and the ones that you do find easy the least, because that's the only way that you're going to see improvement. And if you want to get more detail into how you can make this timetable, definitely be sure to check out my video on timetables, because I go into depth about how you can use this revision timetable to get the best grades possible. Moving on, another tip is to make sure you start early with your revision resources. So don't just leave it until the end of the year to start making flashcards, because you will have too many flashcards to make. If you want to make your flashcards, make them as you learn the topic. So before every topic exam, make your flashcards, and then make your posters, your revision resources, your summaries there and then after you finish a topic. That really helps you for the future. You don't want to be the person who's trying to put everything together in February, in March, when you should be actually doing exam questions. Finally, this is probably what you came for. I'm going to be teaching you the grade 9 method to use exam questions. So here's how you can use exam questions effectively in order to get the best possible grades. So throughout the year, what I would do is do exam questions in the topic that I was learning in lessons. This basically helps me to test my understanding and also see how the exam board phrases questions in this topic. Because one thing you have to realize is for GCSEs, they don't have like an unlimited amount of questions they can ask you. Ultimately, almost every question will be a repeat of something that's come up before, will be very similar to something else. So it's really important that you increase your exposure to as many questions as possible, because this helps you to be prepared for anything. So the way I would do exam questions is I would always do them in exam conditions. I would never do them open book. I'll never have my notes open. I'll never have anything like a poster above me. I would do them based on what's solely in my head, and I really recommend you do the same, because you won't have your notes with you in the exam. This purely relies on what you have memorized and what you understand in the topic, which is the best way to test yourself. Once I do the questions, I would then go to the mark scheme and I would be very strict to myself. I would mark myself as harshly as I would expect the examiner to, because if you don't, then you're basically just playing yourself. So then when I would find the right answer, I would always make sure to write it in a red pen. If I didn't get an exam question correct, then I would go into why I didn't get it correct. Was it because I didn't understand the topic? If so, that means that I need to work on my understanding through videos, through asking my teacher, through different resources such as a Pearson revision book, and I would have to address that there and then. If it's because I didn't read the question properly, that would mostly be an exam technique error, and I would make sure that when I was doing exam questions next time that I would properly read the question and I would make this effort to not do this again. But if I got this question wrong just because I didn't know what the question was asking, or I missed out a crucial keyword or sentence, I would then integrate this into a flashcard that is related to this question. So remember when you made your flashcards before, you should go back to your flashcards and add in anything that comes up in exam questions, because this will help you to memorize this term or sentence and then write it next time if you get a similar question like this. Any question that I would see that always comes up, I would actually make that a flashcard in itself, because if it's always coming up, that's a sign that it could come up again. So having it in your set of flashcards is never a bad idea. Now let's talk about when you should start revising properly for your exams. So this is a question I always get. People always say, when did you start revising? Would you recommend revising year 10? Or would you... Some people think that if they start revising in year 11 alone, that's too late. I'm here to tell you it's not too late. So when I actually started revising properly, like I was focused on my exams, this was in February, March. So throughout the year, I was doing exam questions, I was making my revision resources, I was basically preparing throughout the whole year. But when it got intense was in March. That's when I purely started doing exam questions. I was hardly going through videos. I was doing all of the past papers that I could, all of the exam questions, and just making sure that I memorized all of the correct answers. This is what I really recommend you do in the 2 months before your exam, because at the end of the day, the thing that you're going to be sitting is exam questions. You're not going to be doing flashcards in the exam. You need to understand how to answer the question in the way that they want you to. So this is the best way to revise. Then if you have any topics in particular when you're doing these exam questions or papers that you're not getting amazing scores in, this is a sign that you need to go back to the basics, go back to your understanding, make sure that you understand it fully, watch some videos, do some flashcards, but only in the topics that you're not doing as great in. So for the past papers, I would recommend that you do all of the different years and also the specimen ones, because the more past papers that you do, the better. I always recommend doing these in exam conditions, so no distractions, no music, nothing. You do them in the set amount of time, and if you run out of time, then you have to just cut it there, because that helps you to see that you have a weakness in your time management skills. So for the next time, you can know how to manage your time differently and how to move on. I would also recommend starting to change your exam technique now to what you'll do in your exam. So what I recommend is when you do an exam question or paper, you go through all of the exam questions, you see everything that could come up, you basically make a note in your head of every question. Then you go to the start and you start the paper as usual. If you ever stumble across a question that you think, this question is really hard, I don't know if I'll get this, then fold the piece of paper over in the corner and come back to the question later, because this basically means that you can get as many marks as you can on the questions that you do understand, and then go back to the question that you don't understand at the end. Because at the end of the day, the grade that you get is based on the amount of marks that you get. It doesn't matter if you've got all of the hard questions right and you didn't get the easy ones right, or if you got the easy ones right and you didn't get the hard ones right. Your grade is literally just a matter of how many marks you got in total. So you want to maximize the amount of marks that you get as much as you can. And then when you see the topics that you're not getting good grades in, this basically helps to highlight your weaknesses so that you can tackle these more in depth. So if there's a topic that you do particularly bad in, so let's say in physics you're really bad at forces and it's coming up a lot in your papers, you realize that you're not getting the questions right, that's a sign that you need to do more exam questions in that particular topic. So go back to topic specific questions and do more questions in forces until you do better in them. That's the best way to improve. Now finally, I'm just going to talk about all of my favorite resources for GCSEs and websites that I would recommend to use in year 11. So one of my favorite resources for sciences was my GCSE Science, because this had a lot of videos in every single topic and it had exam questions for every subtopic, which I found really useful. As well as this, I used to use Physics and Maths Tutor for exam questions for all of the sciences and also math. I would use corporate maths and I would also use Maths Made Easy. I would also use random websites. So if I was struggling in trigonometry, I would search trigonometry and Excel papers, and then I would use whatever comes up, because maths is something that you can use almost any question so long as they're related to the exam board. For essay-based subjects, I would mostly rely on the Pearson revision guides, because they're honestly so amazing and condense information so well. So I would really recommend that you check those out for your essay-based subjects. And for English, I would use YouTubers such as Mr. Sally's, Mr. Bruff, Miss Stacey Ray, and YouTube was basically my main resource for English, because there's so many different teachers who give such amazing tips that you don't really need to buy a resource in particular for English. And if there's any resources that I missed out in particular, I'll link those down below. So now we're coming towards the end of the video. I really hope you found it useful, and I hope you have an amazing time in year 11 and get the grades that you want and deserve. So I'll see you guys next time. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Bye!